You are now listening to the I Think I Love My Wife podcast. And this is your best friend's best friend, Chidozie Okafor, ready to take you on another journey. Are you with me? Because I'm ready. Let's get it. This episode is sponsored by Nello Effect, a coaching and consulting service that helps people turn mindfulness into action as they navigate the dating world as well as their relationships. Follow on Instagram at nello.effect and find more information in the episode description. Today we talk about supporting a pregnant wife while living long distance. We discuss the difficulty of having to terminate a pregnancy. We discuss the importance of not checking out during traumatic situations. And we dive deep into the emotions and fears that come with navigating the pregnancy of a rainbow baby. Hey, what's going on, people? This is Chidozie. I have Julian back again. I just appreciate how open he's been so far, and so I had to bring him back. There's a couple of areas that we haven't got into that I want to make sure that we talk about, because I think a lot of people deal with this and we don't spend enough time talking about it. So it's an important topic just to understand that, one, if you're going through this, you're not the only person that goes through it. It's more normal, or it happens, I should say normal, but it happens more often than we think. And also you can hopefully learn how people have navigated it. So if it's helpful for you, you can use that as inspiration or a pathway for help you to overcome it. But before we do, want to go through our rapid fire questions. Like I told you before, we'll go through these quick, short, just abbreviated answers you can give us. We may pick a topic or two to get on afterwards, and then we'll move forward from there. Okay. You ready to go?
Let's do it.
So first question, is it necessary for your wife to be your best friend?
No, I don't think so. I think you can.
Okay.
I think you can have best friends and your wife as a great friend.
Would you say your wife is one of your best friends?
Yes, I agree. I do think we are best friends. It took us a while because of our different personalities, but I think we're now in a place that we can say that.
Okay. From a love standpoint, how do you prioritize it? Wife over children or children over wife?
Wife first, children second.
Okay. Was your wedding worth it financially?
Yes, because we didn't pay for it.
It's always it always makes it. If you were to pay what was paid for it, would it have been worth it financially?
No.
A ballpark. You can give me a round number. How much did your wedding cost?
I'll give you a range so she doesn't get mad at me. I would say anywhere from 30 to 60. Easy.
Don't give me no crazy range, bro. Like,
okay,
all right, 30 to 60, that's a big difference.
Let's call it 45.
30 to 45 or 45 to 60?
45. 45.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you had a fixed amount of money to spend on the next two things I'm about to say, what would you prefer to spend more money on? A big ring or a big wedding?
The wedding.
Okay. How do you guys do? How does your financial structure work for you all? Do you have joint account, like a big joint account, or you guys have separate accounts?
We have a mix of both. We do a joint account for our bills and stuff, and then we have separate accounts for just kind of where we get allowances for whatever you need.
Does all the money come into the joint account and it goes out to the separate accounts, or there's a fraction of it?
It goes in. Yeah, all of it starts at the joint account, and it has and
then you divvy it out it gets allocated.
Yeah.
Got it. How are you? What would you say the relationship is with the in-laws? You love them. You love to see them. We see them from time to time, and that's cool with you. Like, how would you categorize your relationship with your in-laws?
Man, since we moved to New Orleans, her mom moved 25 minutes away. We see her all the time, and it's great.
True or false? Guys mature later than women.
True.
Okay. This is about sex. Your personal preference in terms of frequency of sex. All the time, weekly, monthly, whenever.
All the time, hourly, whatever we do.
He's like, don't stop. Okay. And then what's the reality?
Maybe a couple times a week.
Okay. Even with the newborn?
I mean, we had to be creative, but yes.
No, it's just curious. We don't need to go too deep. How much time would you say that you get alone time with your wife? A week, like let's say a week.
A long time, man. Couple hours with the newborn now.
How do you feel about that?
we're trying to figure that out. We're trying to get him on a good schedule to make that better. But it is tough. It's tough.
And it makes sense. You haven't. I mean, baby requires all the attention right now.
Yep.
I asked this question: who runs the show, you or her?
I like to say me, but she does. Yeah.
That's fair. I think most guys that are confident, secure, and alpha males are actually okay with their wives running the show.
Yep.
Like letting someone else do that, like deferring to someone and that they trust and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that a secure man that's confident and all that, that's where like we think, these alpha secure men are actually have a problem with their partner doing that stuff, where the concept is around like, oh, alpha male has to tell you everything that we do.
Yeah.
And most of my experiences, most of them are like cool with that.
Yeah. If you pick the right partner, you should have the trust.
Yeah. And then what would you say is your wife's greatest attribute?
Patience.
What's more important to you, to be respected or to be loved?
Loved.
Okay, cool. So that was it. That was quick. Hopefully it didn't hurt too much.
No,
I want to spend usually we'll go through questions and stuff, but I really want to dedicate the larger part of this episode to a topic that I think, a lot of people, families deal with in terms of pregnancy and trying to, have kids. Usually, when you're young, you're like, I'm trying to do all the things not to have a kid. And then as we get older, at least I've learned that it's not as easy and as, seamless and smooth as we always think. And so we'd love to learn about your journey with your two kids. And I thought about asking questions up front about it, but I think it'd probably be more meaningful for you to share the story the best way you want to share it, and then I can ask questions accordingly.
Yeah. So about a couple of years after we got married, we decided to start trying for our first child. And it's funny, when we had this big party, just hanging out, and we had a trip planned in Thailand, and we're leaving that next week. And she found out she was pregnant that week, like
Oh, wow.
2 days, I think, before the trip. So we obviously scrambled, and you end up going to Hawaii and stuff, and like got tickets
Instead?
Yeah, just to kind of not go over there with Zika and all that stuff. And so,
Yeah, you just don't know. You don't know food. Yeah.
yeah, so we didn't do that. And we once we found out, she was already we were bi-coastal. So I was in Seattle. She was working at a social justice firm in Alabama, and so I was traveling back and forth until she started to get pregnant and start showing. And I'm sure her coworkers thought I didn't exist. They never thought
Deadbeat dad.
I would fly in for like the weekends and then fly back, right? And so she was a trooper. We ended up having him in Montgomery, Alabama, and he came out super healthy, 8-pound baby, big boy, and it's been great. Flash forward, we moved to New Orleans.
Before you get flash forward, how was that for you? You're expecting father. I hear stories all the time of how much, not only respect, but what kind of feeling it is to watch like your wife's body change and see all the things that she has to deal with day to day, right? And so I imagine you've heard similar stories, and so some of it you're not being able to be there the way you might want to be, and also with all the things you have going on, working to try to support her as best as you can and be there for her from a distance until you could get there. How was that on you?
Man, it was tough, man, because all of your friends in Seattle, they see just you, so they're in this single mode, like, oh, we can go out, we can hang out, we can do all these things, and then she's at home like basically miserable, right? Because we lived in a 3rd-story apartment, so you had to like walk all the way up the stairs, and it was fine the first month, but by month 8, right, like that was a journey for her. And so it was always tough, and I always felt like I wasn't doing enough, right, because I was long distance. And so I really, every time I came down or came back, I really tried my best to like do whatever was necessary, right, like whatever we needed to do, take care of all the guy stuff, the trash, the car washing, and all that stuff. And so what I tried to do was find a place that had the valet trash and all these things that I think she was comfortable with doing initially, but would not be comfortable with after 5-6 months. And so I tried to make sure I came to as many of the things that she had, especially later in the pregnancy when she was showing, so that there wasn't any work gossip that she's just lying that she has a husband. And so it was tough, man. It was not the easiest thing to do. The minute we got really close to having a baby, I just kind of like jetted and was like, "Hey, I'm not coming back for months," right? And
Hmm.
so I knew I had to make a change with that because I wasn't going to be on the road. For context, my dad is a truck driver, or was it? He is a truck driver still, but so he was constantly on the road when I was growing up, right? And so
Yep.
I wanted to make sure that that was not the case, and I wasn't starting a precedent as well. And so the agreement that we had was, once the baby comes, we'll all figure out how to be the same place as much as possible and not be
Hmm.
doing this back and forth. So we kind of gave ourselves that time, knowing that it was going to
To
be
figure it
difficult.
out. Yeah.
But and the cool thing is, like, I started figuring out, like, I started looking for other roles that let me have some location flexibility.
Good. How was some of what I learned in doing having these conversations is that sometimes, especially like in the highly emotional states, and I can imagine, being pregnant, it can get to that point. It's hard to recognize how the other person is feeling, right, and what they're going through because you're just in yours. And so I can imagine for a person that's pregnant, that like there's points where there's resentment or annoyances that you're not there. And I think some of the stuff that I've heard from guys is like those situations, how that person carried themselves or handled those kind of stressful situations really showed, was the reason why they fell in love or showed a different aspect of it. How was that with her? I mean, I imagine like, she's a trooper, she did it, but it wasn't, I imagine it wasn't all peachy,
No,
and there
no,
was,
no, no. There was definitely like, hey, you need to be here. Like some resentment of like, you need to be here, especially like, if she would call me and, like, let's say, 10 o'clock her time, and I'm like at a happy hour for work, right? Like,
yeah.
and she's like in pain or something like that. And she's like, "So you're out, right?" Like, and so I would definitely, I would definitely get that vibe. And so, I think one of the things that I try my best not to do, and I had mixed results on success of like, is like saying the thing of like, "Hey, you wanted this decision, right? Like, you wanted to go to Alabama with knowing with all the information that we had, right? You still made the decision." And so I tried to catch myself of like, "Hey, we made this decision. So like, don't finger point like that because that's just going to take us down a bad path."
Hmm.
But like, from frustrations that arise, like, folks lash out. And so for us, like, it was really like recognizing that, hey, we signed up for a very difficult moment. Like, none of our friends would ever sign up for this, but they all realized that when we signed up for it, they're like, yeah, that's something you guys would do. And once we signed up for this moment, we just got to see it through. So like, let's not,
Hmm.
neither of us quit. Like, let's see it through. We have a plan to get to the other side. Like, we always kind of kept our eyes on the prize. And she was, like I said, man, like, she would like do everything that she needed to do, or everything that she had to do, as if I was there, almost single parent mode, while she was pregnant to a certain extent. And so I, always have a like respect for that, from her, to like go after her dreams, but then also like know that it's going to be tough.
Yeah. No, for sure. And so I want to keep, you're alluding to the next pregnancy, fast forward. So I didn't want to stop you, but I
Yeah,
wanted to highlight what that was like.
yeah. So I think that was a great tangent. And so I think, going flash forwarding a couple years, we're here in New Orleans. We have a house. We're settled. Our son's in daycare, and everything was great. And we're like, let's expand this family. Obviously, during COVID, everybody was in the house, so I'm sure
Yeah,
there's
there's a
going to
ton of
be
COVID babies
a
being made.
boomer V2. And we were trying, and so we got pregnant pretty quickly, and we immediately noticed something was off, in this whole situation. And we're going to get checked out, and it just kind of progressively kept getting worse over the
Hmm.
course of a few weeks. And we ultimately end up having to terminate the pregnancy. And that was a tough blow for us because I think we took the first baby for granted, right? Like, we made a decision to get pregnant, and we got pregnant very quickly with the first kid. And so
Hmm.
the same thing happened. We made a decision to get pregnant. We got very quickly with this second time. And so we were like, oh, it's just gonna work out, right? Like,
Yeah.
this will be fine. And so I think for us, it was definitely something that, like, kind of like a punch in the mouth. of
Yeah,
like,
but they were shot in the gut. I
yeah,
mean,
that
just a
we were not expecting. And so, and obviously, she was carrying the child, so it was a lot different emotion for her. But I think for me as a husband, like, I just thought we were invincible in that sense. And so, it kind of really hit just kind of my level of confidence that, like, okay, now we need to think about diets and stuff. And the one thing that I did was go to another extreme of like starting to like look at her like, okay, we need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And she's like, yo, bro, I researched this well before you
you
figured
came along
you figured out that this could be
for you, ask Siri.
and so I had to check myself of like feeling like okay, now I got to get invested and manage this like a project, right?
Yeah,
Like,
just like a man just being a solver. Like, we having
yeah,
to solve this, right?
okay,
Yeah.
cool, doc, what we got to do? Cool, let's do that. And so we quickly jumped into all the tests that we had to do and everything like that. And we didn't hesitate because the doctor asked us like, so you guys want to try again pretty quickly? And we're like, yeah, like let's go for it. And so it was tough, right? Like we mourned. I don't think we mourned as effectively as we probably could have, but we got pregnant pretty quickly for
Mm-hmm.
right after that, and so I think it like helped us skip the morning time because the
Mm-hmm.
one thing about this for us, it didn't get to the point where we saw this baby on scans and stuff like that, and it was like a person yet to a certain extent,
Mm-hmm.
and so like you couldn't put like a face to what you
Yeah.
were mourning. It was more of an idea of like this could have been a second kid, and then once we got pregnant again, like it just kind of skipped right to that, and
Yeah. It's
so
like, not to make a joke out of it, so I
no, go
apologize.
ahead.
But it's like y'all's relationship. It just kind of happened, and you were able to jump to the next one, and it worked
Right.
out. And
And,
so,
and once it started working out, like I think we were mindful that that happened, and so we managed this pregnancy much more carefully than the first kid,
mm-hmm.
in terms of like getting all the tests and doing all these things. But it almost helped us ease the transition of like that period that I think could have been tough. Like I have friends that lost a kid and it took them
Mm-hmm.
a long time to either have a second kid or they never did, and that stuck with them, right?
Yep.
Um, for us, we were blessed and fortunate enough to where it was painful, but the pain was quickly, we didn't have a space for that pain because now we had to focus on this new baby.
No, I hear you on that, and blessings that you guys were able to, have another child, and it didn't require some, like you mentioned, the time frame or the long, kind of drawn out process before you were able to conceive again. I guess if you had to put yourself back in that moment, you find out the news, or I think you guys probably were feeling, uh, sentiments, like you said, something was different, but you get affirmation or certainty that this is not right, and you have to make a decision. What's the feeling, like what's that like?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the first part is like making sure that you have all of the opinions, right? Like we obviously got first, second, third opinions, and we approached it very meticulously. Like let's get the medical opinions and make sure that we know that there's really zero chance that this is a thing, right? This is going to happen. And so like
Mm-hmm.
let's for us it was really like rip the band-aid off in the sense of let's make sure there's no hope, right? Because
Yep.
if there's any hope, then we'll keep trying, right? We'll keep going down this path. But if there's no hope, to our point earlier, let's do what we need to do ASAP so that we're not, like grinding this thing out long. And so we had to go through this process. They asked her if she wanted the longer way for them to get it out, or if she wanted the most effective way, right? And that was going to require outpatient surgery and all that stuff. And I really pushed for the most effective way, right? Like let's really kind of get this out. And I think the challenge for me was I was thinking of it more of a problem that needed to be solved, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, this is the situation. Here's the problem. Here's the context. Here's the problem. Here's the solution, right?
Yep.
And I had to come back to like an emotional space where she was. And initially, I don't think I did that well. I was trying to get us to the next hurdle,
Yep.
and I knew that the emotions was going to slow us down. Like, hey, why cry over it when we know this is a situation? Let's go fix it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in hindsight, one thing I would do differently or think about differently or tell folks to think about differently is like really know that time and like do what you need to do to mourn that time and close that chapter, because you might not get lucky, or that blessing might not be there to have that next kid, and you don't want to jump into where there's resentment and all this other stuff. I think I got protected from the resentment because we had another kid.
Mm-hmm.
Had I the path I was going down of trying to just solve the problem was not healthy, and more so because I didn't want to think about it. Right, I didn't want to think about like, dang, that just happened. Right,
Yeah.
and so it was a defense mechanism for me. So I would tell people, really let the emotions hit you, like let it hit you, and it's okay.
Yeah. And reading between that, it's safe to assume that she was like considering or leaning towards the longer approach than the quick one.
I think she was 50-50, and
Okay.
I just was not. I was like, yo, like, hey, you said there's no hope. Like, don't give her more hope. Like, let's do what we need to do so we can figure out what our next steps are.
And so I'm prying here, so just let me know to the degree that you're comfortable or not. But so what does that look like? Because every time we'll talk to people about a situation, and it's easy to say we did X. This is what happened, and this is what it led to, right? But if you could provide or share a little bit more of the context to what those conversations look like, is it we're in the doctor's office and we had it? Is it a series of conversations? Is it, well, it was going one way and then I had to take time off and then it went, then I
Yeah,
came back at it? Like, how does that process to get to an ultimate decision look like? Because it's never, in my experience and what I've learned, it's never like one conversation.
yeah. And I think had it been one conversation, it would probably been a lot worse. But we were in, we had the doctor's office. They gave us the news, and then they stepped out, and obviously their wave of emotion hit everybody. And then we start talking about our options. Like, hey, this is the options they gave us. And I was trying to solution it right there.
Yeah.
And what I think I realized was like she wasn't going to be able to make a decision at that point, right? Like that just wasn't going to happen. And so I kind of pushed continuously, but we then made it home, tried to do a regular, day. We talked to, our family members like my mom and her mom and the people that pray for us and stuff like that. We really talked about it, and went off and did that as a thing. And whether that's good or bad, I don't know, because like obviously the grandparents get freaked out
Yeah.
and then they start asking questions, and that just kind of creates this cycle. But it was good for us to like talk about it. Like it was one of the most interesting conversations I actually had with my dad. Me and him have never had a conversation like that where we talked about this happening, and he was like, "It's gonna be okay. Like things don't go the way you always want them to go. It's gonna be fine." And it was a little bit more emotional than I expected, and that
Yeah.
helped me. And his big thing was like, now you just gotta help her, right? And so that helped me kind of go back and say, okay, what do we need to do? Do we still want another child? Yes, we do. This was not for us, it was not like something that was genetic or anything like that. It was just one of those things that,
Yeah.
1 in 1% could have happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened to happen to us. And so all the doctors, everybody thought that like this was not a recurring thing. Like you guys will be fine. And so I was like, because we know that and we feel confident in that, how do we get to that fine state as fast as possible? Are you okay with that? And I think that's what helped her say like, yeah, I'm okay. I don't like surgery, but like I'm okay with us trying to get this out and move on to the next phase. And so it was a series of conversation, man, but it really happened over a short period of time. We got the news on like probably like a Thursday or Friday. We made a decision probably by that Monday, Tuesday. Went to
Gotcha.
church, prayed about it, talked to other folks about it, talked to other friends who had gone through a similar situation,
Mm-hmm.
and just got really good advice and really good support from our network. And then we had a conversation again with the doctor, and she was like, I think this is the best decision. We believe in science. And so we, did what we needed to do from our, medical professional stuff. And it worked out. That procedure they actually did, they said that actually might increase the chance that she gets pregnant the next time anyway. And lo and behold, we got pregnant relatively fast after that.
She was gonna shoot.
We was gonna shoot, man, and I guess Steph Curry me and him must share some things or something.
Nah, one, I appreciate you for sharing that. I wanted to just understand. Had it, fortunately, I would say for you guys, right? All those scenarios, it worked out the way it worked out, right? But in the decision point, she was 50-50. You were leaning towards a different direction. If you think about the process you guys have went through, right? And let's say you guys go through the entire process and she determines that she's leaning the opposite way that you were. How do you think that would have played out for you? Like,
Yeah,
in terms of where y'all would have went?
to be honest, man, I would have choked back any pushback on it. It's her body, right? And so she knows it better than I do. Trust me, I know my wife has researched this topic more than I have, and so like if she says like this is the best course, like I would have fell back, to be honest, and I wouldn't have held any resentment. I don't think, because I trust her in those scenarios. I think for me, I give my opinion, and like we talked about earlier, control. Like if you trust that other person, you should be okay with the outcomes that they make, and so or the decisions that they make, and so I was fortunate enough to like be okay with whatever decision she made, but I wanted to have an opinion, because I think the worst thing you can do in a scenario like that is not have an opinion. Be the guy that checks out and say, okay, wife, you go figure it out. Like it's your body, go figure it out. So I wanted to make sure like I researched, I read, and I did my thing, and I was like, oh well, based on what I read, this is what I think. Just so she knew she had a partner that actually cared about the outcome.
No, that's real. I appreciate that. And so we fast forward, go to the procedure. Within a relatively short amount of time later, you guys are pregnant. She's pregnant again.
Yep.
How was that feeling? I'm sure there's mixed emotions there, and I mean on your wife's part, but just for you, I'm sure there's some level of excitement that hey, we're back at it again. But there's probably some fear. Are we going to go through this process? We're gonna have the same results that we had last time. How were the emotions?
We're on pins and needles, man. Every step of the way, when they offered a test or whatever, we took it. We were really afraid, to be honest. And so I think we were excited and obviously felt good about the situation. We got extra, scans, all these things, just to make everyone feel comfortable. And it wasn't easy, right? Like there were some tests that they wanted to do on his genetics and all that stuff, and we had to do that. And I think with our first child, they asked us, and we said no, like it'll be fine. With this kid, we were like, yes, like do all the tests, we'll pay whatever, just to make sure that he's okay and we know what the situation is. And so I think for me, it put on my high risk alert mode, and so really making sure she didn't doing all the things that I didn't do in Alabama, like making sure she didn't pick up on things and like all these things that were not great for her current situation, and making sure that she took off earlier than she did in Alabama, like getting rest and all that stuff. So we really approached her like a fragile egg, man, and like bubble wrapped her to a certain extent. Like, don't go do all these things. She wanted to go, I want to go to this event and all that stuff. Nah, we can't do that. You can't do that. Like you sit home, you go home.
No, I get that, and I wonder, in situations like these and other ones where it's highly sensitive, highly emotional, what I hear the guy saying is, I wanted to make sure I was strong for my partner or my wife, right?
Yeah.
To what degree did you have to feel like you had to be strong for her, whether to like help her be more confident, or just to provide a level of strength if she wasn't, to what degree did you feel like that? And then also on that, within that, how much were you able to like show how you really felt or have an outlet for how you really felt? Because like you said, we both were afraid.
Yeah. No, I think that I approached it slightly differently. I decided that while I was confident that this baby would be fine, I decided to show more of my fear about the whole situation and be in the trenches with her, right? Because in my mind, I didn't want her to walk away thinking like I didn't care, like, oh, this is just gonna happen, this will be fine, right? And so I really was trying my best to, have the conversations about it, get the test done, and do those type of things, but also ensure her confidence of like, hey, we prayed about this. Every day we go forward is a day that passed the day that we had to terminate the other baby. So we need to be okay with our blessings on this, and so for me it was just more like leaning into our religion, leaning into the medical advice that we got, and making sure that we went to everything and all the tests and asked questions. I asked way more questions to doctors this time than I did the first time. And a part of that was to show like some semblance of like I'm in this, right? Like you're carrying, but like I'm in it.
Got it. I know we're getting close to time. Just a few more questions, and we can keep them quick. Given the experience that you've had now, and thinking about that in comparison to distance aside, comparison to how you thought about, your first pregnancy, what would you suggest to people in terms of going into pregnancy, things that they would do now that that you've been through the experience? Because one of the things you mentioned was, and we got all the tests this time. The first one we didn't. Are there things now when you think about it, or if someone's asking you about to do versus not do, that you say like has really changed your mindset?
So pause. That's a that's a longer answer than I can give right now. Can we? Because I got to jump to this, but can we come back to that question?
Yeah. What we'll do is I'm going to bring Julian back when we have all the guys together, and we'll talk about that then.
Oh, I didn't want to end your thing that way, but I was just saying. Sorry.
No, we can't. This is what we do. We got time constraints. 2 questions, and I'll let you go because I know you got to go. One, why did you get married?
I knew I was in love with this person. 2,
general, independent of the person.
Yeah. Okay, got it. So I think for me, it was a partnership that the religion taught us that I wanted to be one with someone that I would have for the rest of my life, and that would help me raise my kids and get through tough situations.
And then the last question is, as your kids get older, and think about hypothetically with a daughter or, with your boys, what advice would you give them on dating, in 20 years?
Yeah, I think figure out what you don't like as well. It's totally fine to leap and it not work out, and be okay with that. Also, set the right expectation, what you want out of that situation, and hold to your guns, right? And hold to that. I think a lot of people get into these relationships and they set expectations, but then they kind of shift. And even though the person's not meeting them, they still stick. Like, really hold to what you set. And if you feel yourself not being yourself anymore, like, it's fine to get out. Like, nothing's bad going to happen theoretically, nothing bad is going to happen if you just say, hey, this is not for me. I got to get out. And the last thing was something we talked about earlier. None of the decisions you make at that point, you're going to think about in 6 to 9 months. So it's fine. Like, fire and forget to a certain extent, and you'll be okay, because knowing what you don't like and what things you won't stay in for is just as good as meeting the miss right now.
Yeah, miss right. Julian, I appreciate you. I appreciate your candor, your vulnerability, your openness, your insight. We're going to get you back. I'm going to get all the guys, like we did in the first season. We'll get the guys back together. There's another person that dealt with some pregnancy issues in their journey. And so I'll make sure that we invested enough time to talk about that too, because I think it's really important for our community. But I want to thank you again for your time, man. This has been great.
Thanks, brother. It's always good catching up.
Now, if you liked the last 3 episodes and my conversation with Julian, I need you to do 3 things. 1, hit that subscribe button. 2, make sure you share these episodes with your friends. And 3, leave a review. Whatever platform of preference you have, make sure you rate us and leave a review of what you think. This is how people know how good the podcast is. And if you don't mind, if you're not doing it already, make sure you follow on Instagram at ThinkLoveWife. It's just been a great conversation and lessons learned talking to Julian. We have some more good people to come. So tune in next week to see who's coming next. All right, until then, you know what it is. I hope the conversation keeps going.